Okay, welcome everybody. Literally welcome everybody. I really do appreciate everyone who joined us in the live, either Zoom or Facebook. Without you guys, this will be very, very problematic to just speak to a camera without anybody watching or listening. So I really do appreciate everybody that is joining us. Tonight we are learning in memory Leilu Nishmat Chaim ben Avraham, and also Leilu Nishmat Yecheskel ben Avraham, as well as to Afwash Lematu Harriet Bat Lillian Yisrael Yecheskel ben Chaya, Yocheved ben Shena, and Matisyahu ben Rachalea. And really, B'Seich Shar Chal Yisrael, there are so many people, unfortunately, that need a refuah shalema. It's scary. In a sense, to tell you how scary it was, this morning I had a list, and I had to change it like right before, because people didn't make it from the morning until now, from when their names came to me until, a few hours later, and then unfortunately they passed away. So really, the entire coronavirus should completely be gone. Our Kadosh Baruch Hu should be able to return us to our homes, to our Batei Midrashim, to our Beit Knesset, and most importantly to Shalayim. Now, I know a lot of people are probably sick about hearing about Corona. Some people may or may not. In the beginning, when this thing first started, people were like all obsessed about it. How many people are infected, and what's going on, and how many in Brooklyn, and how many in China. And even though now, I don't know how interested people are, those numbers are completely not accurate. The majority are not being tested, even though right now, as in America, USA, we top China. We have more cases than the entire world, and even that the numbers are not accurate. I believe we have more than quadruple what they're actually saying, because they're really not testing everybody. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is we really do need to take this stuff seriously. People are still going out. People are, I don't know, I hope people are not doing minyanim anymore, but people need to go and take this something very serious. People are literally, I don't know if you guys are in touch with what's going on, but like day in and day out, there's, not even days, hours, there are people that are just not making it. The people that were healthy a few days ago, a few weeks ago, are just not making it. It's something that's very, very scary. It should really wake us up. And what we've noticed is, right when this coronavirus started, the shiurim world just like blew up. Like everybody, and Baruch Hashem, it was amazing. Everybody was like obsessed with like learning and like, davening better, and people were listening to shiurim nonstop. And what were shiurim that were going on was the corona topics. That what was going off the hook. Now, what were the majority of these corona shiurim dealing with? It was dealing with Emunah, how to deal with Emunah during difficult times. When people are going through difficulties, through turbulent times, they need to go and connect to something and need to get through something, and that really is where Emunah comes in. And really, we are living through, scared times, like very, very turbulent times. We have over here, people are scared that they might get sick. People are scared that maybe their family members might get sick. People are scared that they might die. I've spoken to people, that people are scared of death. That doesn't happen often, not for Americans. We don't think like that. So you have people that are scared of these things, and people are scared of the death, and people are scared of the financial market, and people are scared. It affects also the relationships. It can affect, the relationships in the home, the relationships outside of the home. So all this is affecting. So what's happening? Everybody is starting to learn a lot about Emunah, a lot about the home, which is amazing. The problem here is that we're dealing with a lot of information, but when you have this information, the intellectually, you have to go and you have to internalize it. Now, how do you go and internalize this? So what we've been working on before coronavirus came in is we were working on the Emunah topics. And that's really what I want to discuss tonight. And I really want to put this into perspective. Now, in order to go and understand what we're dealing with, I'm going to give a quick recap of the last three classes, because tonight's class is going to be extremely, extremely important. What we're going to try to do is all the information that you've been learning and you've been listening to, whether it's through the coronavirus, whether it's through your own learning, whatever it is, so something, and how do you go and how do you internalize it? How do you go and you change your life? How do you go and you become a more relaxed, happy person? So let's go and give a quick, very, very quick recap on our last three Emunah classes. So in Emunah Part 5, we went and we spoke about a concept, and this is really like a three-step process on how to internalize it. This is a question that I get all the time. So we hear all about Emunah, but how do I change my life? So here it is. Listen closely, because this is where it is. There's a three-step process. This is how I broke it up into 3 steps. Step number one is, this is the Emunah part 5, the class that we gave, is that you have to know that there is a God. You have to know that there is Hashem. The stronger and the more that you understand this, the more that you can internalize this, the stronger your Emunah is going to be. So it's not just the fact like, I know God exists. No, no, no. You have to go and internalize it and know it to a level that you have to keep on learning it and understanding it and internalizing it day in and day out. That's step number one. Know that there is God. Step number 2 is Emunah part 6 that we gave. And that is, now that you know that there is God, so what about God? Like what? What is God? How do we understand God? And this is where we gave the 7 criteria from the Chavot HaLevavot. And we'll give a very, very brief overview on it. The 7 criteria of understanding what God is and how God relates to us is that God is compassionate, not like a merciful God, more than any other merciful being. The most merciful that you can, more than a parent, more than a child, more than a spouse, more than anything you can imagine, God is more merciful. That's one. Number 2 is God isn't forgetful or lazy. God isn't forgetful or lazy. Number 3, you have that God is strong. There's nothing that God cannot do. Number 4 is that God knows what will benefit you more than what you think you know will benefit you. Number 5 is that you have been under the exclusive care and only of God since the moment that you are born until you die and beyond. And this is what the Gemara in Brachot says in page 33b, Hakol b'dei Shemayim, everything is in the hand of heaven. And the Gemara in Chulin, page 7b also says, Ein Adam nokef etzba'o lemata, a person in this world doesn't even stub his finger, Ela im kein machizin alav melamala, only if they decree it above. Meaning even that stub, even that time when you stub your toe, and you praise Almighty when you stub your toe, even that time, that's something that comes directly from God. That's number 5. Number 6 is all matters are completely in the hands of God, entirely. And number 7, God is generous and kind. Those are the overview of the 7 criteria that the Chavot HaLevavot goes and describes to us. That's step number 2. Step number 2 is to not only know that you know who's God, now you internalize what God is. You internalize the concept of the mercifulness, the love, the compassion, the fact that everything comes from God. That was part number 5 and part number 6 in our Emunah series. Now, this is all nice and dandy. This is what? This is intellectual. This is something that we could go and discuss this from today until tomorrow, and it's great. It stays in your mind. It's intellectual. You're able to focus on it. You're able to understand it up here. But how do you take it from here to here? This is where we spoke about in Emunah part 7. How do you differentiate? How do you go? What's the difference between Emunah and Bitachon? So Emunah is knowing about this. It's knowing it. Bitachon is putting it into practice. It's taking it and putting it into practice. And this is where we come to today's class, B'ezrat Hashem. With God's help, today we're going to discuss how do you go the 3rd and final step, and how do you go and how do you implement the Emunah, how do you implement the Bitachon, and this should change your life. So we start off where there was a man who used to frequent the Chazon Ish. And one time, the Chazon Ish goes and tells him, just like out of the blue, just gives him a story. He says, sometimes you see a person who is religious, he looks, like religious from every meticulous detail, and suddenly, out of the blue, he throws off Judaism, completely throws off his kippah, throws off everything, and then he changes, and then he's completely not involved. Says the Chazon Ish, people think that this is a sudden change, but this is not. There was an internal decline much earlier, and only slowly did it come out, and suddenly the facade couldn't come out anymore, and then it just went and it blew up in his face, and he wasn't able to continue with it. That's what the Chazon Ish tells this person. So imagine that scene. This person just walks into Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish just tells him a random fact, a random story, and then he finishes. And the guy's like, okay. And he goes home. And he's thinking, why would the Chazon Ish tell me this story? He's like, does he think something about me? Is there something going on? He was very bothered by it. Then he went to his dorm. He was a yeshiva bacher. He went to his dorm and he started speaking to his friend. And his friend's like, what? You're not going to ask the Chazon Ish about this? He's like, he just told you like a crazy story. Go back and speak to him. So he gets the next day, he goes back to Bnei Brak and goes back to speak to the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish sees him, and then all of a sudden he smiles. He figures that he's going to come back. And he goes and asks him, he says, Rabbi, can you explain to me that situation? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, why did you tell me that story? So the Chazon Ish goes and explains that Emunah is something that requires constant strengthening. And if you don't constantly reinforce this, it will slowly dissipate and weaken until it disappears. Just like the fact that when you have somebody that constantly and slowly drifts away from Judaism, it slowly goes, but eventually he'll look or she will look appear religious, but inside it's gone until the facade all of a sudden breaks open, and then it's going to all spill out, and they're not going to be able to go and pretend anymore, and then it's going to break out. But in essence, the same thing is with Emunah. Emunah is something that if you don't work on it often, daily, moment, even on an hourly basis, it's going to slowly dissipate. And this is why Emunah, the word Emunah, comes from the word Imun. Imun means training. When you train a soldier, how does a soldier train? A soldier trains, if anybody's been to the army, or if anybody knows anybody has been to the army, they wake up, like they barely sleep. They sleep in their army clothes. They train them to such an extent that they're only thinking about what they need to. It becomes like second nature to them. They don't even do anything. It's just like it becomes, like without any voluntary movement. They just jump and they know where to get the gun. They know how to go and assemble a gun and disassemble a gun without even thinking. And the truth is, this is also how it works for the medical field. Medical field, you have doctors that literally are on call for like 48 hours straight. They're like working for like days on end. And they get to the certain extent that the medical knowledge is so much ingrained in them that they do it second nature. Emunah is a skill just like that. You have to go and you have to instill it like it's second nature. And this is what the Rambam, Maimonides, in his introduction to Perek Chelek, he goes and he says that he elaborates in tremendous amount of detail on the principles of Jewish faith, like the 13 principles of faith. And when he goes and he explains, like usually the Rambam is very, very brief, discusses things very to the minimal extent possible. But when it deals with the principles of Jewish faith, he goes in tremendous detail. And he says the reason why, he says that a person should not mistakenly think that you could grasp the concept of Emunah, grasp the concept of the principles of Emunah by learning it once, twice, even 10 times. You have to review them repeatedly and repeatedly. And the Rambam said that these topics were more precious to him than anything else that he taught. Emunah is the basis of everything in our religion, and this is why it's so important. Rav Levinstein was once asked why he spent so much time speaking about Emunah. And he answered that this question can only be asked by somebody who doesn't understand what Emunah is. Because if you understand what Emunah is, then you won't go and you won't ask why we speak about it so much. Because it's so imperative, so important. And this is how I bring the introduction to this topic. This Emunah is something that you have to constantly focus. You have to constantly learn, you have to constantly study, and you have to constantly grow in it. Now you guys have so much information. I'm assuming that you guys all went and listened to so many classes, so many amazing things that the rabbis were going and teaching us all during this turbulent time. But now what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? There's a Gemara in Brachot, page 5b, that says Rav Huna had 400 barrels of wine that turned sour. And he went over to the rabbis and they said, look into your actions. Why does God do something? God doesn't just randomly do something. There must be a reason why God did this to you. Go, look, and see why he did it. So he says, wait a minute, do you suspect me that I did something wrong? And they respond back to him, do you suspect that God did something wrong? If God did this to you, there must be a reason. So he goes over to them and he says, so you must think that you must have something. Tell me, what is it that you think that I did? So they told him that you have a tenant farmer, that you didn't give him his scrap of twigs that were coming to him. So, Rav Huna goes and he says, what? He says, this guy, he steals from me. He steals everything from me. I have to give him also this? And he said, still, whatever you need to give, you have to give. You shouldn't steal from you have no right to steal from him. That's what the rabbi told him. So Rav Huna went. He accepted upon himself to go and return the stuff back to his tenant, to give this stuff back to his tenant. And what happened over here? The Gemara goes on, one of two things. One of the interpretations of the Gemara is that the wine, which turned sour, turned vinegar, turned back into wine. Says the Chazon Ish. Says, think about this miracle for a second. You have a situation, and all the wine went rotten, spoiled, turned into vinegar. Then you change something, and all of a sudden the vinegar turned back into wine. Isn't that crazy? He says, that's a crazy miracle. Says the Chazon Ish, in our days, if that would happen to one of us, what we would do? We would try to search for the natural causes for why wine turned into vinegar. Why did Corona come over here? Because of China, because of this, because of that. We try to search for the natural causes. But our sages, our Chachamim, they had such a level of Emunah that they knew that everything is focused on the spiritual world. And if something comes into this world, it all sources from the spiritual world. Once we fix the spiritual world, we fix what's going on over here. because they had something called tangible emunah. And tangible emunah is something that we need to work on and we need to grow. So the question is like this: how do you get tangible emunah? And this is, I think I said this is where we're starting step number 3, but this is where we're really starting step number 3. The Chazon Ish goes and says like this: in order to get tangible emunah, very simple. Ask God for every single thing that you need. Whether it's small, whether it's speak to God. The Chafetz Chaim goes and says you should speak to God like a child speaking to their father, in their own words, in your own, just spill it out. Just like open it. Go into the corner of your room and spill it out. Such prayers, says the Chafetz Chaim, are always heard. And this is also, Rabbi Nassan of Breslev goes and says you have to make it a habit that you pray for everything, not just the big stuff. Pray for every little thing that you need. Every little thing you need. Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz also said that you should not do anything without praying first. To understand this, if you're going and you need to buy a new pair of shoes, you should go. People don't think like, wow, I'm going to speak to God about it. Yeah. Say, God, please let me find a pair of shoes. I need this size, this color, this price, and please let me go find this shoes. You need to go buy a car? Tell God what you want. You want a house? Explain God what you want. How many rooms you want? What's the square footage? Everything that you want, speak. You need a shidduch, speak to God. Not only when you're praying. Speak to God at all times. At all times. The more that you connect to God, the more tangible that God becomes. This is how you grow in your emunah, is talking to God. You want to buy a dress for a wedding? B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have weddings again soon. You go and you speak to God. God, please give me a dress at this price, at this color. I know this is a very big stress for women, especially for the brides. It has to be a certain color, and it can't, men don't understand the difference in color. White is white, and then off-white is off-white, but then there's about 1,000 different colors between that, and it has to be exactly, and they go through a tremendous amount of stress. Speak to God. Talk to God. You're a salesman. Go and speak to God about what you want. You want to make a sale. You have a business. Please, God, let me be successful. Anything that you do, that you just talk. The more that you talk to God, the better off that you are. There are some people that before they buy an item, they go and do a tremendous amount of research onto it. Speak to God. God, please let me find the right item. Let me be comfortable. Some people are very, they can't decide something very, right away. So they're like indecisive. So they go back and forth, and they don't know what to do. Speak to God. God, please help me. Let me find the right item. Quickly, nicely, swiftly, whatever it is that you need, speak. The more that you speak, the better off that you are. Even to the extent that you're going and you're preparing food. There was a Rabbanit that she went and her son saw her that she was about to do laundry. Then she stops the laundry. She runs to wash her hands and she's mumbling under the breath. And the son goes over there and says, Mother, what are you doing? And she says, I was about to do the laundry and I wanted to speak to God that everything should go well with my laundry. But now I'm speaking to God, I have to wash my hands first. I can't just speak to God. So I stopped the laundry. She went to wash her hands and she said, please God, help me with the laundry. Help me that it should go well. You have to speak to God for everything. You're looking for a parking spot. Speak to God. People think, I don't want to waste it. I'll speak to God about the big stuff. The little stuff I don't want to, there's no such thing. You have to speak to God about every little detail. So step 3, part 1 at least of step 3, is ask Hashem for everything. Speak to God about every little thing in your life. Now, this, I'll tell you straight off the bat, you hear it, by tomorrow, I don't know, you may or may not remember. What I'll recommend you to do is put an alarm on your phone, or wherever it is that you have, maybe 15 minutes a day, or an hour a day, depending on what you could do. And say for the next hour, before I do anything, or the next 15 minutes, I am going to go and say, God, can you please help me with this? Speak to God in every little detail that you can. Just an hour, or 15 minutes, whatever it is that you could do. That's part 1 of step 3. Part 2, says Rav Dessler, you have to refer to Hashem at every opportunity. You have to say, Baruch Hashem, Im Yirtzeh Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem, all these things. And if something already taken place, the Pele Yoetz says, you should also say that with the help of Hashem, I was able to go and accomplish X, Y, and Z. But let me put a little caveat into this. People say this without thinking. How do you guys, all the seminary girls, right, when they come back from Israel, without even thinking, Baruch Hashem, Im Yirtzeh Hashem, Mazel Tov, there's just like 3 words that are just Jewish, every other word. They just throw it out. And I'm not saying it's bad, it's great. But it comes like without thinking. It's just like, it's part of the vernacular. You have to, it's like a couple that, they go, or even children to parents and, siblings, you go and you finish off the phone and be like, oh, I love you. And then you hang up. and you say it without even thinking. You're just like, I love you, and then you hang up. How do I know? Because like sometimes you go and you speak to people and they say it to you and you're not even related to them. They're like, because it comes so second nature to them that they just like I love you is just like goodbye. The next time that you say I love you to your spouse, or the next time that you go and you say I love you to your parent, stop for a second. Think. I'm about to say, no, I love this person, and I'm saying I love you. And when you're going and you're saying Baruch Hashem, you think about it. People don't even know, what is Baruch Hashem? What does that even mean? Like, you think about it, like, bless Hashem, Im Yirtzeh Hashem, that what are you going to do? If God wants it, then I'll do it. If with God's help, Be'ezrat Hashem, then I will be able to go and I'll do it. Blessed be God, but so on and so forth. Before you say these things, think about it. It's not enough just to say it. You have to think about it. This is what the Shlach HaKadosh goes and says, that before taking any action, a person should say, Ani boteach b'Hashem, I believe in God, and I recognize that the outcome is completely and totally in God's hands. I'm going to do whatever it is that I feel like I need to do, whatever the requirement that I need to do, but ultimately it's all in God's hands. Now furthermore, one also goes and needs to go and thank God. Say thank you, God. Not enough to be like, okay, thank you. Stop for a second, and maybe you could put that in that 15 minutes or the hour or whatever it is that you put it. Say thank you to God for like something. And like, just like mean it, like just like really like, yeah, thank you God, not like, thank you God for like my face. And just like stop for a second and be like, thank you so much God for the ability to have a Zoom shoe. Thank you so much God for Torah anytime. That's unbelievable. Torah anytime, like what would the world do? What would coronavirus be without Torah anytime? I don't know. People would not be able to go, like stop for a second. And by the way, it's nice to go, and of course you should say thank you to God, but say thank you also to Torah anytime, to the whole team. They work nonstop. The people that are behind the scenes, whether they're sick, whether they're not, I know the team. And literally, I could call them at midnight and forget about midnight. I call them 1 or 2 in the morning. They're up, they're dealing with it, they're constantly working just for what? That you could be able to go and learn Torah. When was the last time that you went and you sent a message to Torah and time, hey, by the way, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you have done. It's unbelievable. There's so much stuff that we have to be thankful for. There's so much stuff that goes through our lives that if we would stop and we would just think about it, we would relate to it completely different. Now, what's so important about saying thank you? Besides the fact that you should have a kalat all, but more than that, you'll start appreciating things more. When you go to your spouse, when you go to your sibling, when you go to your parent, and you say thank you for something, and you mean it, all of a sudden the relationship changes. It's a change in the relationship. Now, what we're doing over here is when we're thanking God, when we're constantly reminding and speaking about God or speaking to God, we're reminding ourselves that everything is from God. And this is a relationship that we're building with God, with Hashem. Now, what type of a relationship? Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, let's say you have a friend, and between you and your friend there's a curtain, and you're communicating, you're speaking, you can't see your friend. But you know that your friend can hear you. And because you know that your friend can hear you, then you're able to talk about it. This is what God is. When you're speaking to God, could hear you. We don't internalize it. We live in a civilization that, like, even though we know that God exists. We know that we're talking to God, but do we realize that we're talking to God? Do we realize that God is listening to us? Says the Mesilat Yesharim. Says when we pray, we have to know that Hashem is with us like a person is speaking to his friend. And you're allowed to go, when you're speaking to God, you can speak to God just like you're speaking to your friend. Obviously, hopefully you're speaking to your friend respectfully, but you speak in a most respectful manner, like, God, please, can you help me with this? This is my situation. You have to relate to God like you relate to a live person, says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus. Rabbi Uri Zohar, he was a renowned comedian, Israeli comedian, who returned to Torah, and one of his friends, when he left the world of, the comedy world and the movie world over there in Israel, so they told him, tell us one last joke. So the last joke that he told him was the following. He had 2 religious young men. They were riding a motorcycle. A policeman saw them. One of the policemen was like, these religious Jews, what are they doing? And he says, you know what? I'm going to get them. I'm going to get them for some sort of ticket. And this policeman was following them. But these 2 religious young men, they were following every letter to the law. Exactly. They were not breaking anything. And this policeman was going out of his mind. He's like trying to find something, a stop sign and this and the turn signal. Everything was al pi halacha, exactly the way it's supposed to be. Finally, the policeman gets so upset. He goes, puts on the sirens, he pulls him over, and he says, yeah, you got to tell, there's something, I'm trying to catch you, the policeman says. I'm trying to do it, but you didn't break a single traffic law. He says, how is it? I follow people all the time. Everyone's breaking traffic law. You 2 did not break one traffic law? How? So they answered, it's simple. Because God is with us. So the policeman's like, God is with you? Now I've caught you. You're only allowed 2 on a motorcycle, not 3. You have you 2 and God, that's it, you have too much. The way a Jew lives with Emunah is that God is constantly with him, just like he's on the back of the motorcycle, with another person. This is the level that we have to have. The problem is, a very, very serious problem is that the relationship, the realness, the tangibility of God falls through. And this is, let me explain to you how Reb Shimshon Pincus goes and explains this beautifully. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 100a, that says that in the future God is going to give 310 worlds to every tzaddik. Now the question is, how do we know, how do the sages know that it's going to be 310 worlds? Maybe it's going to be 310 rivers, maybe 310 mansions. Why worlds? Explains Reb Shimshon Pincus. If somebody walks into a store, and let's say you walk in a store in America, and you say, how much is this? And they say 20. Are you going to say 20 what? 20 smiles? 20 candies? Or it's like, what do you, no, $20. Like, what do you mean 20? When you go and buy something in England and they tell you it's 20, what do they think? It's 20 pounds. When you go buy something in Israel and they tell you it's 20 shekels. Why? Because that's the currency and that's what you're dealing with. When you speak to God, God is a creator of worlds. And when God says that he's giving 310, what does that mean? That means that God gives 310 worlds to each tzaddik. Now, when a Jewish person has a true relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he receives unlimited chesed. Unlimited chesed. If you think about it like this, you have a wealthy man, and he married, let's say, a woman who had absolutely, her assets were zero. No, you know what? Her assets were negative $1 million, whatever. Very, very poor family. And the second that he put a ring on her finger, what happens? She becomes as wealthy as he. Assuming that they have a healthy relationship and put the prenups inside and whatnot. But as soon as she gets that ring on her finger, all of a sudden she becomes healthy. She becomes healthy, I hope. She becomes wealthy. She becomes wealthy. What is the way Reb Shimshon Pincus goes and explains this? He says, like, you know, look at it, like Esther Hamalka, Esther, in the Purim story. How is it that she was able to close all the barber shops by just a word of her mouth? The entire Shushan, the entire Persia capital, everything, all the barber shops were closed. And the answer is, the second that she got married to the king, she became the queen. And when she became the king, that comes with power. When a woman goes and a woman gets married, she takes on her husband's family's name. Now, what about us? A Jewish person is called, listen to something so beautiful, so amazing. A Jewish person is called Yehudi. Yehudi is comprised of Yud, Hey, Vav, Dalid, Yud. Now, the name Yehudi comprises the 4 letters of God's name, Yud K and Vav K. But there's one other letter that's added in Yehudi, and that's the Dalet. Dalet stands for Dal, poor, impoverished. A Jewish person's name, we are Mrs. God. We're Mrs. God. That's who we are. When we grab hold onto the relationship, when we grab hold onto the Emunah, this is a tremendous amount of chesed and power that comes with it. When you go and you see a wealthy businessman go and book a first-class ticket on an international flight, and he's flying with his wife. Now, is he going to go and his wife going to sit in economy? She's going to sit with all the cattle? Where is she going to sit? She's going to sit also up in first class. Why? Somebody's going to go be like, listen, I understand you're a successful businessman. But what about this woman? Is she a businesswoman? Is she an author? Is she someone popular? Is she someone famous? What is she? And the answer is, she's the businessman's wife. And as a businessman's wife, she gets to go first class. She gets to go wherever her husband goes. The Jewish people, we may not, says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, be more exemplary than everybody else. But we have a relationship of love with God. And that comes with tremendous amount of benefits. And this is when you think about Shabbat. Shabbat is coming up. Shabbat is like a honeymoon. Imagine a husband and wife that are working. And they're both working full time. And once a week they go to a hotel together. Now imagine they're going in the hotel together and the husband's on the cell phone, checking his emails, answering, messages. And the wife is like, listen, we don't see each other all week. Put the cell phone away. It's just us right here. For one day a week, it's just us. Shabbat is a honeymoon. Shabbat is a honeymoon between us and God. This is the relationship of love that's all about. This is what Shabbat is. This is what the relationship between a Jew and God is. And this is why, if your spouse, or anybody for that matter, gives you a cup of coffee, what do you say? You say, thank you. Thank you for the coffee. Now, when God gives you everything, so when you're about to drink something, when you're about to take something, you say thank you. You say, Baruch atah Hashem. You bless God and say, thank you, God, for everything that you have given me. Now, the difference between Jews and other people in the world is not that Jews believe that God exists. explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, everybody believes that God exists. Don't believe their baloney that they're spewing. The difference is there's a relationship of love. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, page 2b, says like this, that when God wanted to give the Torah, he went to all the nations of the world. And all the nations of the world went and they didn't want to take it. Except what? The Jewish people, they wanted to receive it. Now, there's something very interesting when you're dealing with relationship. One of the most important aspects of relationships is that it's mutual. You want to be there. A husband wants to be desirable to his wife, and his wife wants to be desirable to her husband. So the first person that went to seek out God, that was Avraham Avinu. He went looking for God. The Jewish people did the same thing when they said Na'aseh v'nishma. They entered a relationship of love with God. They wanted to be there. They want to be in this relationship. And this type of a relationship, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, is not like a husband and wife, even though we started off explaining it. But it gets stronger. It's a relationship like a parent to a child. This is why the Pasuk in Shemot, page 4, chapter 4, verse 22, it says, B'ni B'churi Yisrael. We are the firstborn nation. God speaks to us like a child. Why? If we're a spouse, and why are we like a child? Because a spouse could be divorced. But a child, you can never divorce a child. You can't tell a child, this is not working out. Now people are going crazy with the coronavirus. You see like these ads, like somebody know that anybody where I could donate clothing with children already in them, and maybe somebody needs it, and people are going crazy over here, and they're going and you can't get rid of your child, normally speaking. You can't. Your child is your child no matter how good or how bad the child is. That's how we are to God. We're God's children. And no matter how far we fall, no matter how bad we are still God's children. Now, when you're dealing with this type of relationship, we have to go and we have to see, how do you go and do we understand, how do we express this type of relationship? So, this a relationship and really this emunah can be expressed in various ways. It could be either in yira, this is like fear. It could be in ahava, this is love, or tefillah, which is prayer. The most practical expression, here's something very, and this is maybe you can understand why I decided that I was going to do emunah first, and my next series, Be'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, I want to do tefillah. The most practical expression of emunah is tefillah. Now, if a person knows that God exists, then he will speak to him when he needs something. The most practical aspect of it is tefillah. Now, we all know that God exists. No one just goes through the motions. This is, people that go through the motions, eventually they'll stop being religious. It might take a year or two, but eventually they'll stop. People that are going and are praying, people that are going and they're religious, deep down somewhere, they believe that God exists. But to tell you how strong you believe that, how strong is your emunah, the main way, listen to this crazy, this is what Rabbi Shimshon Pincus says, the main way to test your level of emunah and bitachon is through tefillah, is through prayer. Now, when you're going and you're praying, what kind of kavanah do you have? So, when a person has a Rahman al-Tzan, a sick child, now it's, unfortunately, people are sick, people are praying for everyone, and what do you do? When you cry to Hashem, we go and we pray to God in Shemona Esrei, you say, God, heal us. When a person's going through tough financial situation, he goes and he begs it, Baruch Aleinu, go and give us panasah. So what are they focusing on? When you're going and you're praying for something, you need a shidduch and you're praying for something, what are you focusing on that moment? You're focusing on the sickness or the financial difficulty or the shidduch that you need. So what people mistakenly understand is that a little kavanah means I kind of need it. A lot of kavanah means I need it really badly. And that's how we judge our level of kavanah. Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, this is completely inaccurate. That's not kavanah. True kavanah in tefillah is to know that you are speaking to a living God. He's alive and real. A little kavanah goes something like this, says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus. God, you are the healer of all flesh. You have, billions of people in your world. Please, can you give me a little healing too? A lot of kavanah, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, goes to something like this. I am not going to leave you alone, God. I love you so much, and I love you, and I know that you love me so much. You are my God. Please give me healing. Meaning that the way that we understand kavanah is to realize who we are speaking to. The more that we understand where we're speaking to, that's the greater level of kavanah. The main thing is to focus, is to know who you're communicating with. Now, when you look at the older generation, they had, like the level of, whether they learned as much as we did, whether they didn't, whatever, to the general population, what they had different than us is God was real to them. God was very, very real to them. God was more real to them than your next door neighbor. And we think, okay, fine, it's not a simple thing. The Gemara in Bachot, page 28b, goes and says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai blessed his disciples before he died. They said, give us a blessing. And what did he say? He said, may it be his will that you fear heaven the way that you fear people. And they said, really? That's it? We should fear heaven like we fear people? Give us a real... And he answered, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai answered him, if only, because when someone goes and commits a sin, what do they usually think? I hope so nobody sees me. I hope nobody sees me. People don't think that God sees them. People don't... It's a level that they know God exists. God exists, that's here. They know that it exists. They know that God sees everything that's here. But there is a disconnect, like, to see that. It's the tangible emunah. And the more that you understand what we're discussing tonight, the more you see how imperative emunah is. The more they see how important it is. Now, to try to explain this in a little bit of a clearer fashion, follow me along with a few minutes. You're going to stick with me. Judaism has three foundations. This is based off the three avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avraham, that's ahava, that's love. Yitzchak, that's yira, that's fear. Yaakov, that's truth and emunah. It's emet and emunah. Now, let's speak about fear. Let's speak about fear a little bit, right? So imagine you're out on the street, and suddenly there is screaming that's coming across the street, and there's a guy that runs out. He has his pants tied on his head like a ninja, and he runs out and he starts banging his head against the wall 12 times. And he counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then he runs across the street and he runs back and forth 12 times. And you see that there's something obviously wrong with this person. And he's doing all these like crazy things. He's doing jumping jacks, and then suddenly he makes a beeline straight at you, and you're about to take a drink of a coffee that you just bought. And you're about to take a drink, and he stares at you and he looks at you and he's like, that's poison. And then he's like, what? And he starts talking to himself right away. Are you going to go? And what happens? Right then, like 5 people come out with like, in white coats, and they grab him and be like, this guy's mental, this guy's crazy, and they take him away. Now you have this cup of coffee. Are you going to drink that cup of coffee? You know the guy's crazy. You know the guy is certifiable. There's situations going on over here. Are you going to go and drink that coffee? I don't know. Like the majority of people be like, no, I'm just going to order. Just be safe. I'm just going to order another one. And you're going to go and you're going to chuck it, even if it was a Starbucks and you had to pay about $750 for that latte, whatever it is, you're going to go and because you're not going to take the risk. If it's poison, you know that it's not poison, but there's like a 0.0000001% chance and maybe it's a poison, you're not going to drink it. So says Rav Shimshon Pincus, if we understand that there's something called Gehenom, there's something that comes that's very hot after a person dies, and there's no doubt, we know, then how come a person doesn't go when a person is about to do a sin? How come he doesn't think like a mental person's coming saying, hey, by the way, you're going to get punished for this? And by then, the Bali Musar said that just for a small chance, we should refrain from sin. So why is it that our fear of heaven, we have all sorts of fears and all sorts of things, but when it comes to our fear of heaven, it's not there. Like, why is it that our fear of heaven is not to the same level as a fear of a crazy man saying, by the way, the drink that you're drinking is poison, don't drink it? Like, why is it on the same level? Why is it that if someone's about to say Lashon Hara, they don't start like shaking, be like, oh no, whew, I almost like just jumped off a cliff. Like imagine, there is in the Grand Canyon, I haven't been there, but the Grand Canyon, there's a ledge that you go down, and it's in the private side of the Grand Canyon, where you could see down 4,000 feet. I don't know if anybody has ever been there, and it's basically glass, and you see straight down. And when you go, you see clips of people, they're going, and they know it's thick glass, it's going to hold them. But look how nervous they are. If there's suddenly someone jumps, they're like, no. Careful, don't jump. Everyone's walking slow and people are going very careful and they're holding on. Now, they're so nervous about something that's so sure. But yet, when it comes to doing something sin, we're not so nervous. It doesn't affect us. And the answer is because of tangibility. It's not as tangible. And the same thing happens when we're dealing with love. When you're dealing with loving God, when you wake up in the morning, right, we make blessings, that God goes and opens our eyes. God gives us clothing. He goes and people are paralyzed and we're able to go and walk. There's so many things that we go and we say every day, thank you to God, and that we woke up. People don't wake up. Now we know that more than ever. People don't wake up. So how come when we wake up in the morning, don't we have this overwhelming feeling of love to God? How come we don't have that? How come we don't deal like that? And by the way, the same thing goes with Emunah. If we understand the concept of Emunah, how come we're not completely relaxed? How come we don't have menuchat nefesh? How come when someone, not you, somebody, God forbid, gets pulled over by police? What happens? They start getting nervous and don't know what's going to be. But then what happens when you notice that the policeman that's walking up is your best friend? All of a sudden be like, whatever, it's fine, like he's not going to do anything. All of a sudden you're relaxed. So beforehand you weren't relaxed, but now you are relaxed. When somebody goes and when somebody has this level of emunah, they're always relaxed. Somebody, God forbid, has an incurable illness and they're stuck in the hospital and the doctors tell them, Rahman al-Tan, you have only 2 weeks left to live. And suddenly there's a doctor that flies in and they say this doctor is the most specialist, he wasn't even supposed to be here. And the doctor goes and looks over his case and he says, you know what? There's an experimental treatment that I'll be able to do it and you'll have a 30% chance of success. How would this person feel? All of a sudden he'll feel so much better. But like what was the difference? Like what was the difference beforehand and afterwards? Now all of a sudden he sees that someone's helping him. He sees that there's a doctor going to be here. But says Rav Shimshon Pincus, when we go on Shachrit, we say that what? That God is boreh refuot. God creates. Ramban says, Nachmanides says that God creates. Bria means that yesh mi'ayin. God creates out of nothing. Meaning that God created a cure that did not exist at all before. Right now we're dealing with the coronavirus. You have the ability to go, and we have the ability to go and get like some sort of, like, besides a vaccine, like a cure, let's say. Imagine how the world will change. The second that you know that there is a cure to the second that you won't know there's a cure. The same, and God, who gave us the coronavirus, could go and take it away. So when we're going, and we understand the amount of chesed that God does for us, how come we don't have this burning love for Him? How come when we're about to do a sin, how come we don't have this tremendous amount of fear in Him? And it's not, people mistakenly think because they don't really believe in God. It's not true. Rabbi Shimshon Pincus does not say it's not true. He says the way that it works is man, like everything else, has certain rules. Every machine works a certain way. We are a machine in a certain way. If you want to use your phone has to have battery. If it doesn't have battery, it's not going to work. If you want to go and start your car, combustion will not work in your car, in your engine, unless you have, gas in there. If you put water in the tank, it's not going to go. It just doesn't work. Man too has a certain way which he works. And there's two parts. There's the intellect and there's the heart. The intellect, this is acquiring knowledge. The heart, this is acquiring the feelings. The heart is what motivates a person. You have to realize also when somebody goes, this is very important in life, like it's not enough to have the intellectual concepts of whatever it is, whether it's you want to go on a diet or whatever it is in your life that you want to, grasp a certain intellectual concept. If you want to change your life in it, it has to go into your heart. Obviously, it starts with your head, but it has to go to your heart. With your heart is what motivates a person. The Torah goes and explains this like this. Kabbalistically, it's Torah. It's or makif. It's a surrounding light, and or pnimi, an internal light. To explain this, Reb Simcha Zissel Ziv. This is the Alter of Kelm. He put on the bulletin board in the Bet Midrash something like this: that it would be worthwhile to be born and to live 70 years just to say Baruch Hu Uval Shemo one time. And then he goes on and says, and saying 1,000 Baruch Hu Uval Shemo does not even reach the reward for saying one Amen. And saying 1,000 Amen does not even reach the reward for saying one Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah. And saying 1,000 Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah does not even reach the reward of learning one word of Torah. This was hanging on the wall of the Bet Midrash. Now somebody who's about to go into Bet Midrash and he sees this sign. You realize right now, every second that we're learning right now, we don't even begin to understand the level it was. You realize that it was worth it to be born just for but one Baruch Hu Uval Shemo. Then you times 1,000 for one Amen, and then times 1,000 for Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and then times 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 for one word of Torah. So somebody who's going and is sitting and he's learning Torah, and he's going, the conclusion that you come from this is that you don't stop for nothing. Like, no, I'm learning now, I'm not stopping for anything, doesn't matter. But let's say, while somebody is reading this letter, somebody taps him and says, by the way, I know somebody who's selling some masks, you can make 10 grand like this. And 95 masks, you can make 10 grand. Is he going to be like, "What, are you kidding me? Right now I'm learning"? It'll be like, "Wait a minute, tell me more. What's going on?" But like, why? Like, you just had the information that you have so much reward coming from just one word of Torah. And the answer is because there's a difference. There's Or Makif. Yeah, we understand this concept, but Or Pnimi, it doesn't go in. The tzaddikim of the generations beforehand, their Or HaMakif, their outside light was just like the inside. They felt it. It was tangible. It was real. It was real. And until a person reaches this level, they will not naturally fear Gehenna. They will not naturally love God. They will not naturally have Emunah and Bitachon and feel calm in threatening situations. When you're going and you hear, let's say, a terrorist attack in France, okay, we get nervous. Like, it's very unfortunate. We feel bad. But what happens when there's a terrorist attack all of a sudden in Brooklyn? Oh, that's something else. Now we fear a little bit differently. When the coronavirus was in China, I'll be like, oh, yeah, the animals, that's what they ate. That's what they're going to get punished. Oh, that's their fault. But all of a sudden it comes to New York. Oh, that's different. All of a sudden, the fear becomes real. It becomes tangible. It becomes something that's actualized. That's what we have to focus on by God, making God real, making God tangible. The scary thing here is, and I could only say this only because Rabbi Shimshon Pincus says this, says that there are fine, respectable Jews. And by the way, I just want to stop here for a second. I want to thank God. Right now, I want to publicly thank God for sending me to learn this, this topic and this class from Shimshon Pincus. Because this, by the way, every time that I was learning this and I was preparing for this, my prayers right after I learned this was different. And I reviewed it again, and it was different. And I reviewed it again, and it was. This is something that I'm thank you God for this, and this is where Shimshon Pincus says something very scary. He said that there are fine, respectable Jews who live 80 years or more, and every morning they take a siddur in their hand and they say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, but without feeling even once that God is real. And a Jew could easily go through life never having spoken to God, never felt the love of God, never felt the fear of God. So the question is, what can we do? What can we do to bring God into our everyday lives, to make it real? Says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, there's two parts of the Torah. The first part is the regular mitzvot. That's the learning and the davening and everything regular. The second part, that's the working. That's making God real. This is what we say in Aleinu every single day. It's a pasuk in Dvarim, chapter 4, verse 29. Yadata hayom, you should know today. V'hashivata elevavecha ki Hashem hu Elokim. V'hashivata elevavecha means that what? You should bring it to your heart. It's not Yadata Yom, but now that you know, what are you going to do with it? You have to go and bring it into your heart. You have to go and internalize it, bring it into your heart. Once you bring it into your heart, that's working on it. When you're working on it, that puts it into a more of a tangible level. The Alter of Kam would learn the subject of Emunah, to tell you how important Emunah is. And this is, by the way, what Bezrat Hashem, this is going to be Bezrat Hashem a long series, and it's intended to be that way. The Alter of Kam would learn the subject of Emunah for 6 hours straight. This is the way Rabbi Yisrael Salanta went and taught him. And he would close himself in a room and repeat the psukim about Emunah again and again and again and internalize it and bring it to great concentration. And Rabbi Shimshon Pincus says a story about himself. He says, on Erev Shavuot, he went to the synagogue and he sat alone for 5 minutes. I'm sorry, not 5, for 45 minutes. He sat alone for 45 minutes and he repeated the following verse over and over and over again. It's a verse from Shemot chapter 19, verse 20. It says, Vayered Hashem el Har Sinai. And God descended upon Har Sinai. Shavuot, that's when we get the Torah, when God descended on Har Sinai. He went and he repeated this verse hundreds of times until the idea of God descending onto Har Sinai came alive for him. This is something that he made it real. The Vilna Gaon one night, he spent all night repeating himself over and over the importance of not neglecting Torah. Now he had a neighbor, the Vilna Gaon had a neighbor who was a working man. And he just heard the way that the Vilna Gaon was describing this. And he went and he decided that he is going to abandon his occupation and learn only Torah. The level of tangibility of the previous was so high. It was so high. Are we lacking? This is what we need to focus on. You want to make Emunah real? People ask me all the time, you want to make it real? You want to internalize it? This is what we need to do. The goal is that you have to make God real. Let's do a quick recap and then we'll open up for any questions. The third and final step. Let's do the 3 steps really, really briefly. Number 1, know that there is a God. The more that you know that there is a God, that's step 1. The more that you know that there's a God, the more that you're going to be able to internalize this emunah. Step number 2 is realize what is God, like what in what sense, and that's where we go and we understand the 7 criteria of the Chavot Havavot. Realize that God is merciful, that God gives you even if you don't deserve it, that God will and controls everything, and everything that God does only for your best. Everything is only for your best. Even if God forbid you get the coronavirus, that is too for your best. And even if you get sick, and even if you didn't get married, everything is for your best. Yes, we have to go and internalize. Why? Maybe we have to do something. Maybe we have to do more shtalut. Maybe we have to go and fix ourselves spiritually. But ultimately speaking, everything is from God. That's step number 2. And step number 3, one of the most important ones, they're all equally important, but one of the most important ones is to go and realize, make God real. And how do you make God real? You're constantly talking to God. You're constantly referring to God. Baruch Hashem, Emirat Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem, but not just saying it. Thinking about it. When you say thank you to God, you think about it and say, wow, really God, thank you. When you go and you ask God for something, you realize that only God could give this to you. Nobody else can give you anything. Only God can give this to you. And this is where tefillah comes in. This is the way that you want to know how your level of emunah is how you pray to God. You have to internalize, you have to realize who you are speaking to. The more that you realize this, the more the higher level of emunah. The more that you, and by the way, this is the reason why we started off saying that this is a constant work. You can't think that this is okay, we listen to this class, we understand it, and let's move on in life. No. This is something that is a constant work. It's a day-to-day work. If you don't train yourself, then you're not going to grow. If you want to build muscle, you have to constantly work out. And if you're not going to do it. If you want to succeed, if you want to have emunah, if you want to make God real, and trust me, you do, if you really, really want it, it's a day-to-day work that you need to do. This is a constant thing that you need to work with, and unfortunately struggle with. We're coming to a time where we're having so much issues. We need it more than ever. And right now you have so much information. There's so much coronavirus stuff going around. There's so much emunah. There's so much bitachon. There's so much going around. But we got to stop for a second and internalize it. These are the steps to internalize the whole thing. We're going and we're sick of it. We're like coronavirus. We're done. We heard enough. You made a big splash. Time to leave. We're good to go. But we have to stop for a second and think about why is God doing this? What can we go and change in our lives? And by the way, it's a serious situation. I can't tell you how serious it's a serious situation. We have to stop for a second and think, what am I going to do different? And if this is what you do different, then good. Put an alarm, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is. Do something that's a day-to-day. That you're going to talk to God, that you're going to speak to God, that you're going to work on your emunah. It's something that's a constant work. And the more that we work on this, the more that we will see the growth in it. And the more that we go and internalize it, the more amazing our life will be. We'll have a connection with God. We won't be anxious. We'll have menuchat nefesh. We'll be relaxed. Our prayers will have such a high power, because that's the high power. Realize to know who you're talking about. It will change your life. A guarantee. We'll open up to any questions. In order for me to open up any questions, I need to unmute. Here we go. Okay. Okay, I have here a question over here. Oh, it's a private question. I'm trying to work on prayer, and I'm not succeeding as much as I want, and as much as I think I can. I'm learning through prayer books, but do I really need to work on emunah instead? It's very possible. Some people, the big issue here is realizing what's the root of the problem. So people think that in order to connect to prayer, they have to realize what prayer is, but it's not always that. Sometimes you have to realize that emunah is the source of the prayer. So the reason why your prayer is maybe not going up to par is maybe because your emunah is not up to par. So yeah, your question is pretty, I would say continue learning about prayer, but obviously work on emunah. You have to realize the kavanah is really very, very strongly connected to emunah. So definitely work on emunah. Any other questions?
Hi, Rabbi. How are you?
Just an FYI, everybody's unmuted.
You so many times.
So, all right. Well, it's off. Any other questions?
I tried the other number. Yes. A few numbers because there were so many.
Yeah. Who I can mute? Is there a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering what happens if a person feels angry with God.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a good question. When the question is what happens with if somebody's going and someone's angry at God? If someone's angry at God, that's obviously going to affect their emunah. They're going to affect their prayer. It's going to affect everything. So how does one work, with that? The truth of the matter is, when someone's angry at God, that means that they're not happy with what God did for them. So in order to work on that is to realize it's actually 100% only related to Emunah. Like when you go and you realize that everything that God does for the best. And by the way, that's easily said than done. I understand there are some very difficult situations out there. But in order to, anger doesn't help anybody. Like you think about it this way, if somebody's going and someone's really upset of their friend and they get angry, that doesn't affect their friend. Like it doesn't change the friend to anything one way. They could curse a friend from today. It doesn't change the friends, whatever. If you want, the only person that anger affects is you. So by you becoming angry, it really only hurts and affects you. So what you want to do is get rid of the anger for yourself, at least for yourself. And how do you get rid of the anger? When you realize that there's a reason and a purpose for everything. And when you internalize that, when you internalize the concept that everything that God does, God ultimately does for my benefit. And sometimes we don't understand it, and sometimes we don't agree with it. We're saying, God, no, doesn't make any sense. When we go and we constantly work on ourselves and internalize that to the point that, God, I don't understand why you did this to me. I don't understand why you did X, Y, and Z, but I accept it and I am thankful and so on and so forth. All of a sudden that anger will dissipate. And by the way, best therapy can make you feel better. You have to, when you're holding an anger and a grudge, you're really, affecting yourself more than anybody else. Answer your question? Everybody's unmuted. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
It's really two questions. So the first question is that we were saying how the relationships become more like a parent with Hashem. The thing is, Baruch Hashem, I have amazing parents and they love me unconditionally. So sometimes if I want to do something wrong, it's almost like this, but Hashem's going to love me anyway. And that, to me, is almost the challenge. It's like the Ahavas Hashem is actually what, like, maybe I have a bad, balance between Ahavah and Yira there, but...
That's a great question. I really like that. That's it. Let me just repeat that question. The question is like this, that if you're going and you have such a relationship with God, they'll be like, well, God will love me no matter what I do, so why do I need to do anything? I could just, God will just give me everything, because, God loves me as, a parent loves a child, and God will give me everything. So, we have to split up this, mute, and then unmute, and then mute, and then unmute. Okay, we have to go and we have to split up the concept over here of the relationship between you and God and your obligation, even though they're connected. So you have an obligation of what you need to do. And that should not change. And then you have the relationship between you and God, meaning that you're right. So if somebody goes and has fell to a very low level, God still loves that person. Don't get me wrong. God still loves that person. But that doesn't change the fact that that person will have to pay to a certain extent for what they've done. And on the flip side, that if someone does something, very good, the love for God, we can't even begin to understand it. For children, we could be biased. For some child that does more, so technically parents love all children the same, and I love all my children the same, but I'm saying for other people. But technically, you could, if a child does more, then there's more affection or something that goes for that child. If a child is a difficult child, and so on and so forth. The way that God works is not through human being intellect. God loves every person unconditionally, true. But at the same point in time, we are responsible for our actions. And even though that God loves us, doesn't mean that God won't charge us, if we could say like that, for our actions. So everything that God works is midah keneged midah. It's measure for measure. So just like you get, reward for the good, you'll get punished for the bad. So you have to think about it in a little bit of a split, but not a split. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I feel like there's also a part to that that's also, Hashem understands why I'm doing what I'm doing. He understands my Yitzhahara, which is also if I'm getting measured, then I understood the struggle.
So, yeah. So this is what a lot of people actually, that's a very good point. That God understands what I'm going through, so God knows that I'm really okay. Which is true, that God
Can you
knows.
mute everyone again? 'Cause
Yeah,
I can't.
yeah. That God goes and God knows where you're coming from. So people feel like, okay, me and God have an understanding. This is what a lot of people, say, like they about to do a sin, and then someone says, no, don't do it. But like, don't worry, me and God have an understanding. This is okay on my level. And it's true that God judges every single person according to their own level. But the way that it works, the way that Torah works, is that there are things that are allowed and there are things that are not allowed. And just because, let's say something's very difficult for you, it doesn't mean that now all of a sudden it becomes allowed. The Torah doesn't say that everybody has to keep Shabbat unless it's difficult, and then you don't have to keep Shabbat. Now, again, there are certain scenarios and certain situations where there's certain rabbis that are more lenient in certain cases. Okay, we're not dealing with particular. We're dealing with right now a broad topic. So when we're dealing with this topic, if God gave you a test, that means that God gave you the ability to pass that test. If you didn't get that test, that means that maybe you didn't get that. You don't have the ability to pass it, or maybe you did. But if you got the test, now even though you think, okay, I'm in a situation, no, there's no such thing as a lost cause. There's no such thing as God knows where I am and God is okay with what I'm doing. God gave you the ability to overcome it. Now, sometimes overcoming a test is overcoming just a little bit at a time. But you have the ability to overcome it. And it's very incorrect to go and think that me and God have an understanding. Even though you're right that God does judge everybody based on their own understanding. God judges you for you and judges me for me as who I am. God doesn't judge you for why you aren't like me, and God doesn't judge me for why I wasn't like you.
And what happened?
That make more sense?
And then just to build on that a second, do you think like self-doubt then is a lack of emunah? Because like Hashem, you've made B'tzalel, Hashem doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. But then you have Bechira, which is all your own thing. So like, I don't doubt the ability that I can pass it as much as full action, my own Bechira.
So are you asking that you have that you feel like you can't overcome it, and that's where the test is really coming, that maybe you should work on that? Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly self-doubt, like in general, and solving, I'm not thinking of any specific challenge, like in general, like I know that I have the ability to do it. I don't know that I myself can motivate myself to do it. Like the Bechira is where I'm a little like, iffy, I guess.
So is your question on how to motivate?
No, it's more, I'm just going to stick with the broad thing. Is self-doubt considered a lack of emunah? Because if Hashem believes in you, shouldn't you believe in yourself?
I like that question. Is self-doubt considered a lack of emunah? So what's interesting is, there's an obligation, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to go and love your friend. Let me mute everybody again. There's an obligation that ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to go and love your friend like yourself. Now, what happens if someone doesn't love themselves? Very unfortunately common nowadays. So if someone doesn't love themselves, what? They're gonna, let's say they go and they're not good to themselves, whether emotionally, some people emotionally abuse themselves, they talk down to themselves. Some people physically abuse themselves, they hurt themselves. So if somebody goes and this is how they treat themselves, how are they supposed to treat other people? And the obligation really starts that you have the obligation, you have to love yourself. I have to be careful who I'm saying this to, but you have to love yourself to a certain extent that you could be able to go and love other people. So you cannot, if somebody goes and doesn't believe in themselves, that's, I don't know if I would say that's a lack an emunah, because emunah is really something that's dealing with, with between you and God in a certain sense. But over here, you can't even get to that. It's sort of like when you want to go and you want to treat your friend right, but you don't treat yourself right. So how could you go and treat your friend right? And I don't want to get into like a self-care aspect of what is needed, but what the focus here is that a person has to go and believe in themselves, and if they don't believe in themselves, then that's a whole that's not even, I don't even know if I would get to the emunah. That would be maybe more in like boosting self-esteem or self-confidence, or maybe therapy or something along those lines to help realize what they're worth. And many people don't necessarily need that. They need to just internalize that the concept from an angle that if God put you in this situation, you can do it. Because if not, you wouldn't be in this situation. So some people go through very difficult parts in their life, and they think like, there's no way I could pass through it. But you could. You could pass through it. The proof is that God put you here. God would not put you in a lost cause. So you have to go and you have to work. I think where the problem comes, often is that people go and they feel sometimes that the road is so far, the mountain is so high, they're never going to be able to go and overcome it. And because they feel they're never going to overcome it, they'll be like, so what's the point of even starting in it? So sometimes success is not reaching the mountain. Sometimes success is taking that small step. Sometimes success is stopping the sin to a certain extent. But, it's not the world that we live in, and especially the next world, it's not all or nothing. There's a lot that comes into it. Let me unmute to see. Any clarity on that?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, the whole thing about breaking down the success is very helpful.
Okay, good. Baruch Hashem. Any other questions? Here we got a question. Yeah.
So, what about like a person who actually had issues with like their father? They always say like Hashem is like the father above and whatnot, even though Hashem is just a being, not really specifically a gender, like man, female. Hashem is Hashem. Like with me, I haven't had connection with my own dad, bio or adoptive, so I'm having a hard time connecting.
Are you comparing, I'm just trying to understand the question, are you comparing God's relationship between you and God to relationship between you and the parent? And your own parent?
So like, I had issues with like my dad, like he kind of walked out from me earlier in my life.
And does that affect your relationship with God?
I'm having a harder time connect with him because it's just like they always say God is like a dad.
So okay, so this is a very interesting point. I'm actually happy that you brought this up. And I'm just gonna mute everybody just so I can speak about it, and then we'll unmute. A lot of people, especially when you're dealing with relationships, because we're talking about over here relationship between you and God, and a lot of people, when we're dealing with when we're speaking about relationship, if they had a problematic relationship, and it doesn't have to only be between a child to a parent, it could be a spouse. Let's say they were in an abusive relationship. The second that they hear relationship, there's like a trigger. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, relationships are not my thing, and there are people that are scarred by this. And because people go and let's say they had a bad relationship with a parent, then it affects their relationship with their spouse. And because of that also affects relationship with their kids. You know how they say that there's a cycle that when people unfortunately, get in an abusive relationship, sometimes if they're not fixed through therapy, it goes and it recycles again through another, through their relationship with their children, and so on and so forth. It's like a rolling ball that just keeps on, going around and around and around and around and never ending. And the problem with that is that we associate our relationships with everybody in the same manner. So a relationship, when you think about it, is mutual. It's I do for you, you do for me, and we do. But technically, the correct way of a relationship is I do for you without you asking to do anything for me, and that's the way that we deal with with relationship. So if somebody goes and let's use an example like this. Let's say there was a spouse, and let's say the wife constantly did so much stuff for the husband, and the wife never saw the husband do anything. And the wife is like, you know what? This is a one-sided relationship. I can't take it anymore. And one day she just blows up at her husband. She's like, how do you do this? I do nonstop for you, and look what I do, and she lists all the things. And for years you haven't done anything for me. And the husband says, I haven't done anything for you. He says, every morning before you wake up, I wake up and I make sure I clean everything, and I set up your slippers, and I go and I prepare you breakfast, and then I go back to sleep so that when you wake up, everything is ready. So I've been doing everything all along, just behind the scenes. But because she didn't see that, and she didn't internalize that, so then the relationship didn't grow. So when we're dealing with our relationship with God, sometimes we say, okay, what did God do? I did everything. I did. I built my business. I built my relationship. When we think we did everything, but really God is behind everything. And this is why it's so important when we look at our relationship with God, we're looking at it in an aspect that God did and does everything. And then when you understand that God does everything, then your relationship, irrelevant on how your previous relationship are, you'll see everything that behind the scenes, it's all God. Like, so the fact that you're healthy, the fact that you're able to come and listen to a class, the fact that you're able to go and you have a roof over your shoulder, the fact that you're able to isolate yourself, which is also Baruch Hashem. The fact that you have so many blessings in your life, when you open your mind, you're like, wait a minute, this is all from God. and all of a sudden the relationship, doesn't matter how bad your previous relationships are, but you see what's going on. So the trick over here is really what we're dealing with. The more that you realize that everything is God, the stronger the relationship is going to be, regardless of how bad that you had it. The problem is that we tend to blame all the bad only on God. And we just blame. And even though God is the source of everything, there's a rhyme and reason for everything. There's a rhyme and reason for everything. Even the fact that you had to be born in such a family where your father left you, and you had to be born in such a difficult time. There's a purpose for that. Why? I don't know. But there's a reason and there's a purpose that God put you in that family. God put you in that body. God put you in that mindset because you have to overcome something. Something, or you could grow from it. I don't know. There's something that comes out, but there's a reason for that. Does that give you clarity?
I'm just trying to connect. That's all. I'm just having a hard time connecting prayer.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. There was somebody else in the background.
I'm having a hard time connecting in prayer.
Work on Emunah. Work on Emunah. Work on Emunah. Daily work on Emunah. We have here another question that was sent to me. The question is like this: it's so hard for me to pray from a siddur with kavanah. For shachrit, I always rush through it, and mincha, I usually skip. Any advice? The advice I usually give for that, for people that have a hard time with the prayer, is to start off with personal prayers. Meaning, so that when next time that you're going to go and you're going to start praying, pray in your own words. Put your own words in it, so it makes it personal. And then, by the way, that's only going to help a little bit. And then over time, the more personal that you get to it, the more that you're going to connect. And I really feel that will help you tremendously. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up?
It's about what you were talking about before. First of all, about the, like, God only gives you what you could, like, challenges that you can overcome. So obviously, like, you have a choice, right? So, like, what's, like, the probability? Like, maybe, like, is it, like, a small probability, a big probability?
What's your probability of passing your test? Is that what you're asking?
Uh-huh.
Yeah? Is that you're asking? What's the probability of passing your test? I'm assuming that's your question. What's the probability of someone passing a test? The answer is that every test is different. Some people go through life with very, very difficult tests. Very difficult tests. And you know, we don't ask for the test, and we don't want to deal with the test. But some people have a serious test. And it could be them, they have the ability to pass it, but it's going to be very difficult. Other times in their life, and this, by the way, goes to everybody, like the test is pretty simple. Like, for example, people, let's say right now, are eating or drinking whatever while they're listening to the class. So are you going to remember to make the after blessing, you know, after we finish the class? Now, for some people, it's not even a test. They'll be like, what do you mean talking about? I understand. But some people, they forget. You know, they're whatever. They're going around and they forget. So that's a small test. And for some people, it's a larger test. For other people, you know, they have, you know, a test with, I don't know, stealing. They have this temptation to go and to steal. For other people, they wouldn't be able to sleep at night if they steal. The other people, they can't sleep if they don't steal. So like everybody has a different level of test. And some people, the test, you know, and trust me, I speak to a lot of people, I really do feel for them. Some people have a very, very, very hard time. Very, very hard time. And the test, the probability, I would say, will be small. And other people will be larger. But that doesn't change the fact that it's passable. It's passable to whatever extent. It's doable. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that situation. Good?
Also, one more question. So what you're saying before that, like before you got into that part, like if they have to,
Yeah.
so like why in the world would it matter what you do to yourself?
Why would it what?
What you do to other people? Like why does it matter the way you relate to yourself and the way you relate to other people? I don't understand that. I'm saying that you said like, okay, you have to love yourself first or whatever. I mean, obviously loving yourself is great.
Right.
But
Because v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, in order for you to go and love somebody, the basic premise of this is very simple. You have to love your friend like yourself. The problem is if you don't love yourself, then how are you loving your friend? You're loving your friend like you kind of care about yourself. So again,
like you love your friend.
You love your friend like you love your friend?
Yeah.
But the Torah doesn't say that. It says v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to love your friend like yourself. It doesn't say v'ahavta l'reacha kireacha, like your friend. You have to love your friend like yourself. Because the majority of people love themselves. The majority of people are obsessed with themselves. And they're constantly thinking, I'm the catch. I don't know why Prince Charming hasn't come knocking on my door. I'm literally the best possible, match out. Everybody thinks of themselves at the highest level. So generally that's a problem. But you have the majority of people, especially nowadays, that have a dislike towards themselves. And by disliking themselves, it gives them a false sense of what's correct and what's wrong, in a sense, to their own well-being. So meaning that some people will starve themselves. And some people will go and make themselves, depending on the self-image, there's so many different things that would cause a person to cause damage to their own body. Now, if that's how they're treating themselves, then there's no wonder, why should they go and treat other people any better? They might, because they say, no, I care about this person more than I do, than I care myself, but that's not the correct way. The correct way is that you love yourself, that you appreciate who you are, you know your self-worth, you know what you're able to accomplish, and then you're able to go and continue and so on and love other people, accordingly.
But you agree it could be the opposite way too, like you just said.
It's possible, but it's not the healthy way. I'm just explaining straight what the Torah says. The Torah says, "Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." Right? Okay, we have here another question over here. Over here, sometimes I feel more connected to Hashem when I say personal prayers instead of using a siddur. Yes, the majority of people do feel that way. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I once went to a Kabbalist, and I asked him, what can one do to get more connected to prayer? And they said a person has to understand what they're saying. So if you don't understand what you're saying, then you're not going to be able to go, and you're not going to be able to, relate to it. So the reason why you relate to God more when you say your own personal prayers, that is because you're relating to yourself. Like I can feel connected, like I know what I'm saying. So when one goes and one starts understanding what one is praying for, then that's going to make that prayer more internalized and more connected. So I still say very strongly, continue praying to God in your own words, in your own personal prayers, but then take upon, let's say, part of the Shemona Esrei where you're going to start learning the translation of what it means, even like a paragraph, and then focus on that paragraph, and then slowly build on it, like take baby steps at a time, and then you'll have a stronger connection to prayer on that. Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, all. Thank you. Okay.